Well, thanks everybody for being here. As I mentioned, today we're going to dive into how different practitioners are using kind of technology tools, mapping tools, databasing tools in their wildfire risk reduction treatment workflows. Really just thinking in terms of kind of from on the ground perspective here. Kind of purposely didn't invite representatives from the various platforms. Really wanted to hear from folks who were kind of using platforms. And we'll actually hear from Nathan Greig from Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District. His shop kind of created organically a platform. And then we'll hear from Molly Curley O'Brien, who's been working with Fire Aside, another platform with WRA's our clients. And so they'll each share how they're working with these tools and kind of how they ultimately lead to informed kind of real world decisions. And I just want to say, I'm sure you all are maybe feeling and observing the same thing that I'm observing, just kind of struck by how many platforms are out there, and not two are exactly alike. And so I could totally understand how some of the more tech savvy out there are maybe using multiple platforms. It's super exciting. It might also feel a little overwhelming. And so one of the things that we want to do with these working group meetings is just sort of come together, maybe reduce some of the overwhelm by hearing from others, hearing from our peers and stories. And then also, like, if you're kind of feeling like a kid in a candy store, that's understandable too. We're in a bit of a heyday for, especially here in the Bay Area. We're so privileged to have so much great data, and we have a state government that's so committed to both, the like grappling and understanding with the enormous issue that we have with wildfire fuel out there, and then all the way to, and here are a whole bunch of tools that we recommend you use to prioritize your actions. So it's a really exciting time, and hopefully today will give us a chance to kind of ground ourselves in some real world examples and reflect on what's useful, replicable, or inspiring. Just before we jump in, just a couple of quick notes. I see Zoe Fung is on with us today. Zoe, and just rifle through here. Zoe and Tatiana Manzanillo. Zoe's from the Contra Costa County Resource Conservation District, and her colleague at East Bay Regional Parks District, Esther. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm like too many tabs. Tatiana Manzanillo with East Bay Regional Park District they co-lead the Flame group. It's kind of a companion group to this group. We try to co-market and also like mingle our curriculum. But Flame stands for Fire Adapted Landscapes Alliance and the Management of Everything. They hold 2 in-person all-day meetings each year, and I know that they're in the middle of organizing one. And Zoe, maybe just to confirm, organizing one in the South Bay, maybe even with MidPen, and would that be in August? Is that correct? Are you in a position to? Yeah.
Hi, yeah. Yeah, I think we're looking sometime in September actually.
Gotcha.
And yes, hopefully with Midpen in the South Bay.
Awesome. Yeah. So Flame's kind of moving around. Last time it was in the East Bay, and so it looks like South Bay. Awesome all-day meetings. Oh my gosh, we learned so much from whoever is hosting, and they do such a great job of organizing good food, good people, and just good topics. Great learning opportunity. And so we will certainly let you all know as soon as Tatiana and Zoe nail down the dates with their partners. So that's awesome. That's coming up September. Send you out the official date when it's ready. And then, as always, if you know someone who might benefit from being a part of this group or Flame, please send them our way. We'd love to have them join these meetings. So Thanks again for being here, everybody. And without further ado, we just want to make sure that there's plenty of time for Q&A and some conversation. And we just have each other this afternoon till 4. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to hand it off to our first speaker, Nathan Greig from Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. Nathan.
All right, let me get going on this. All right, make sure you guys can see that screen there. Cool. All right. Thanks, Tom. Great introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Nathan Greig. I'm from Midpen Open Space District, and I'll just go through some of our wildland fire resiliency program and the tech tools that we're using to develop our program. There we go. So we, as an organization, I'll just give a really quick brief background of Midpen. We, as an organization, were founded in 1972. We're kind of the spine of the Santa Cruz Mountains. We've preserved about 70,000 acres over 27 preserves. We open up trails to the public 365 days a year. We've got about 250 miles of trails. So I'm just highlighting this particular circle here. Let's see if I can get my laser pointer up. There we go. I'm highlighting this to show. I'll come back to this general area multiple times throughout my presentation. So just highlighting that the area I'm going to show is kind of central to where we are, the Montebello Skyline Ridge, Russian Ridge, for those of you who are familiar. All right. So our mission is to acquire and preserve a regional greenbelt of open space in perpetuity to protect and restore the natural environment and to provide opportunities for ecologically sensitive public education and enjoyment. And I just want to pull one particular phrase that I haven't bolded out of this, and that's ecologically sensitive. So I'll come back to this in just a few minutes. So just for a little bit of fun, there we go. So it's just a quick video of a remote masticator. There's not supposed to be any sound. A remote masticator that for our program chewing through some coyote brush, just for a little opening starter. All right. All I'm going to show there. Okay, so again, these are our program goals and objectives. So our overarching objective is ecologically sensitive vegetation management. And we're doing that by promoting healthy, resilient, fire-adaptive ecosystems, by reducing wildland fire risk, and facilitating the response of fire agencies. And you can see there is the ecologically sensitive part. And that's why I really wanted to show what our mission statement is and how that ties to the goals and objectives of this particular program. This is kind of a corny slide, but I hope everybody will appreciate a little bit of corny slide to just remember that. I put some yellow stars on the slides that I think are kind of the foundational slides for our program. So our wildland fire resiliency program is comprised of 4 pillars, what I call them, 4 plans. The first is the vegetation management plan. The second are pre-plan and resource advisor maps. The third are prescribed fire plan, and the fourth are monitoring plan. So today I'll really focus basically just on this vegetation management plan. But if you have questions about the others, by all means, ask me offline after, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So our vegetation management plan, so again, that one piece of this, our annual workflow looks something like this. We'll start in the springtime with coordination meetings with fire agencies. We'll then do our GIS modeling exercises, which I'll go through. We'll develop our work plan, do resource surveys, then kind of refine and create specific plans, implement those finally, then monitor and update and adapt and report. And then this cycles back again next year. So today I'll really be focusing on the modeling, work plan, and the project development components. So our vegetation management plan has got basically 2 types. The first is enhanced fire management, and that's your prototypical hardening. So this is really focused on infrastructure, getting civilians out, getting responders in. So this is, think of like a shaded field right along the road. So when I say enhanced fire management, I really want you to think about like public safety. The second piece of that is the second piece of vegetation management plan is ecosystem resiliency. And this is ecological health. So this is focused on habitat health, a combination of habitat and fuel loads. This is much more light touch on ladder and surface fuels, and it's got focus on resources. These are not competing interests; these are complementary interests. So our wildland fire resiliency program is holistic, and it's looking at both the human side and the ecology side. Our program goals and objectives, again, you can see those, the two types of vegetation management plan built into our goals and objectives. Here is our ecosystem resiliency goals, and here's our enhanced fire management goals, and we have that intersect at reducing wildland fire risk. All right, I realized I didn't have a lot of pictures in my slides here, so on my transition slides I added a picture, but I couldn't think of a good one for GIS modeling, so this just makes me chuckle. If anybody else appreciates that, yeah, you're welcome. So I'm going to jump first into the GIS modeling for the enhanced fire management side. I'll generally do enhanced fire management and then ecosystem resiliency. That's how my brain works. And so I'll start here with the GIS modeling for enhanced fire management. These two pictures here are the actual wording in our EIR. Happy to send out the links to that if you're interested. But basically on the left is the envelope in which our work can take place. In other words, the spatial filter. The right is the actual prioritization criteria. So let's get away from the words and let's make that a kind of a picture. So here's all the criteria. So we take criteria like structures, sudden oak death, target hazards, evacuation routes, critical infrastructure, things like fire stations, natural resources, historic and cultural resources, fire risk, treatments that have been done in the area, recommendations from fire agencies, and then conservation grazing, and that's got a star. I'll explain that in a minute. These are all then passed through that big spatial filter. And then once they are passed through that spatial filter, each one is simply given 1 point. Conservation grazing is actually -1 point because the cows are kind of doing that work for us, if you will. So anywhere that's actively grazed, where you essentially take 1 point out. Where a project has been completed, we kind of reset that back to 0 for 5 years, just so we're not doing the same thing over and over and over again. And the reason we reset it is because we're really trying to classify the top tiers. In other words, the top 10% of all of those areas where we can do work. That's where we really want to focus our efforts. So this is our model for our enhanced fire management. We essentially take some criteria, we pass them all through a spatial filter, and it's simple point addition. Now I'll jump back to the place I was talking about at the beginning. This is kind of the core of our skyline region. And you can see that what's being shown here is the reds and oranges are tier 1 and tier 2. So these are the highest priority for enhanced fire management. So what pops out here is essentially the evacuation routes and the infrastructure, the human infrastructure that we can harden to be better prepared when a wildfire happens. So that's the output for our enhanced fire management side. Now I'll jump back to the ecosystem resiliency side and kind of run through that same process. Again, this is our EIR, the actual wording from our EIR. On the left, again, is the envelope or the spatial filter through which the priority criteria on the right are applied. So again, visually, and I've bolded these first 3 because they're very similar to the 1, 2, 3 of those same criteria from the enhanced fire management, but you can see that the rest of them are very different. And so again, there is some overlap between enhanced fire management and ecosystem resiliency. But again, we're now focused on the ecosystem health or ecological health side. So our criteria are natural resources, fire risk, again, think pathogens like sudden oak death, for instance. Professional opinion, where should foresters think we should be working? Past land uses. So for instance, if we've had a timber harvest plan that's, maybe we're seeing a huge, dog hair stand of Doug fir. Could it benefit from prescribed fire? Is it going towards that late cereal habitat stage? Are we seeing encroachment either between like grassland or Doug fir? And then both climate resiliency, both are experiencing exacerbated climate change or are climate refugia. Those again are all passed through a spatial filter. This spatial filter is very different than the previous one because again, we're focused on the ecosystem resiliency side here. Those are then given a weighted sum. So these are weighted slightly differently. There's not just a 1-to-1-to-1. And then we're looking broad ecosystem wide. So then these are passed through basically a 100-acre filter to kind of smooth that out to see where should we be looking. And here is that exact same location, kind of the central core of our skyline area with the output from our ecosystem resiliency model. You can see that this highlights natural areas much more than the human infrastructure. So just as a comparison, I'll flash back up the enhanced fire management, ecosystem resiliency. So very different. All right, so now let's actually let's get a work plan out of some of this. So how do we get from the left picture, we got a whole bunch of coyote brush to a much cleaner shaded field break alongside the road. How do we prioritize and get there? So again, I will focus first on enhanced fire management. So enhanced fire management is we are being much more discrete and focused and objective. So we at MidPen have 12 fire agencies that we are kind of within their jurisdictions. So each one of them wants us to do 100% of our work in their jurisdiction. Very natural. But we have to be objective and spread that out to where is the greatest need. So our goal is to do 85% of our work in our highest tier areas. Those are our tier 1 and tier 2. So the highest point totals, we're doing 85% of our work there. We can do a maximum of 730 acres new each year and 900 acres of maintenance. On the ecosystem resiliency side, this is designed to be much more subjective. It is designed to be a general guide for a botanist, an ecologist to go out there and say, yes, this area needs work. This would benefit from a large scale landscape treatment. So this is, again, it's much more of a guide, a subjective guide than a objective discrete focus. And on the ecosystem resiliency side, we can do a maximum of 500 new acres and 500 acres of maintenance on an annual basis. So I will start with enhanced fire management. So I'll just run through a quick example of this. Again, here is our output from our enhanced fire management model showing some of these corridors. So I want to draw your focus to this corridor right here. It's Alpine Road between Russian Ridge and Skyline Ridge. So here again is our enhanced fire management model. Just as a quick refresher, we've got a bunch of criteria. We'll pass them through a filter and then add those points together. So at Alpine Road, it meets all of those criteria. So pretty much every single one of those criteria it meets. So we said, okay, this is a really high priority place to put in a shade field break or a community escape route. So we said, let's go as far out as we can according to our EIR, which is 200 feet from the road. We mapped that out. We got out into the field and we said that is absolutely not feasible. There's no way we can get crews or machines 200 feet down with an embankment here. Scaled that way back to what was actually feasible with hand crews and our machines. And then further scaled that back when we had some resource surveys and said, okay, let's take out some of these drainages and other sensitive features. So a kind of a manual refinement process based on what is actually feasible on the ground. Now, when that comes out, here we have what that community escape route looks like now once it's been kind of refined by human touch. Fun fact, we actually just acquired a new property, 175 acres, this kind of southern end of Russian Ridge since I made these maps. So we might be going back and refining this even more to do some more work. So that's the enhanced fire management side. And now I will jump back and look at the ecosystem resiliency side. So again, this is designed to be the subjective guide again. Here's our output. And this time I'll focus your attention down here on the southern end in Long Ridge, where we can see really this is showing up very as the potential for benefiting from work here. Again, our model. And so in Long Ridge, we see that this area really shows up for natural resource benefits and pathogens and disease. It's seeing quite a bit of sudden oak death, as well as Doug fir encroachment on redwood forests. So we got our vegetation ecologists out there. They conducted their surveys of the sensitive resources. They put some protocols in for what they wanted to do as far as research goes, and then refine those polygons down to exactly what we wanted to treat. And we were left with these purple polygons down in the southern area of Long Ridge, and those will be treated in the upcoming years. So putting it all together, we're looking at both enhanced fire management for public safety and ecosystem resiliency for ecological health. And again, these are not competing interests, they're complementary interests to have a holistic program. So there is both sets of treatments, one taking place, one going to be getting off the ground soon. So that is kind of like an overview of our Midpens, the tech we're using to do the work for our well and fire resiliency program. So with that, here is my email and kind of a quicker link to our fire program. If you've got any questions, feel free to let me know.
Thank you, Nathan. Wonderful. Just applause all around. That was excellent. We have time for just a couple. We're going to have time at the end for some discussion, but just a couple. Anybody have any clarifying questions? Such as, Nathan, I was curious for the ecological resilience output, just clarifying that red is a greater need. Is that correct? Is that sort of a higher ranking?
I really should have said that. Yeah. You
Okay.
Good
Cool.
good assumption there. Yes. Red here is the highest potential benefit for conducting treatment.
Got it.
Yep. Thanks, Tom.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. And then curious how you all how you spatialize the professional opinion.
Yep. So we basically ask foresters and vegetation ecologists, do you know of any place on the landscape that could really benefit from this kind of treatment? And we basically digitize those areas and add them directly to the model.
Got it.
Yep.
So they digitize it, and that's great.
They say, like this, this Douglas fir stand within, a particular preserve, for instance.
Excellent. And then, oh, please, sorry.
And that goes back to, some of the data that we've all been working on and contributing together. Like the fine scale veg maps just come in absolutely critical for this kind of work. It's super helpful.
Awesome. I was going to ask you about that, and Molly. And Stu has how do the acreage maxima and minima compare with the need, or I guess maxima compare with the need and capacity?
All right, Stu, I'll be completely honest with you. We need a lot more, and we have a capacity for a lot less. So,
We'll,
we're
we'll we'll be talking to you with CLN3. So
we are building our internal crews to do more work internally, as well as building our capacity to manage contractors to do that work. The funding for that can be challenging though.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nathan. We'll bring you back for some discussion after we hear from Molly. Molly, thank you so much for joining us today. And I invite you to take it away.
Okay, just give me a second here.
You got it. Molly's been working with multiple clients who've opted to work with Fire Aside, and Molly volunteered to give us a perspective after working with it for a bit. It was really fun to chat with you before this, Molly, just about the kind of the really strong databasing functions of Fire Aside.
And my stellar performance in the tech check before this has since subsided. So sorry, everybody.
Where's it all?
Where did it go?
The share button?
Yeah, no, I've got that.
Elusive. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Are we there?
We are.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Yeah, so Tom, thanks for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Greetings from sunny Santa Rosa. My name is Molly Curley O'Brien, and Together Bay Area and Tom and Michelle invited me to come talk to you all today to talk a little bit more about Fire Aside and using parcel level data to implement community scale wildfire resilience. And I'm really excited to talk about that today. I've been working with Fire Aside as a tool for a handful of years now. But before I actually talk about Fire Aside as a tool, I think it's really important to ground ourselves in what this community wildfire resilience looks like. And in March of this year, the California Wildfire and Forest Health Task Force released the governor's updated list of priorities. And at the tippy top of that list, as you can see, Nathan, I'm also a big fan of using yellow stars in my slide decks to be able to hone in on the most important part. You can see that at the highest level of state government, there is a priority to improve home and community wildfire resilience. And so what that tells us is that there's consensus to prioritize these efforts that keep our neighborhoods and our communities resilient to wildfire, and that in order to do that, there needs to be tools to be able to effectively and efficiently do that. And so Fire Aside has come on the scene as a means to be able to help in that way. But before we go into that, why is someone from WRA, a consultant, talking about wildfire resilience and Fire Aside? I just wanted to name that silly connection and go into a little bit of detail around what WRA does within wildfire resilience, besides hang out in front of Air Force One at the California Wildfire Conference in 2023. Which is where that photo is taken. I don't know if anybody was there that was for that conference, but that was a very fun little activity to explore Reagan's Air Force One. I digress. What WRA can do, though, is lead GIS services. We have Peter Kobolars, one of my colleagues here, who attends this working group with frequency, and he leads that GIS services team within WRA. And I lead the community resilience team, which helps clients and partners go after state and federal grants around wildfire resilience, lead engagement and outreach efforts around that. We've managed a lot of multi-stakeholder partnerships, public-private partnerships when it comes to forest health treatments, defensible space efforts, et cetera. And then design and launch cash incentive programs. And we've been doing that for the last handful of years with Fire Aside as a tool in a few different capacities. So that's the connection to Fire Aside. And So when I'm going to be talking to you about Fireside, it is coming from the perspective of the user. Like I said, I've been using it now for about 4 or 5 years, have used it with a variety of clients, have used it with volunteer assessors, with inspectors at fire departments and fire protection districts who are leading the way. And so there's a variety of ways that this tool is used, and I've been able to see a lot of the ins and outs of this tool because of that, which has been a real gift, I think, to how we can be able to better use this type of tool in community. But what is it? What is Fireside? So its mission is to engage and motivate residents to take action and reduce the wildfire risk in their property and community. It's being used, it's growing, it's 75 municipalities, 25 fire agencies, 16 counties. That's not just within California. You're seeing that in Colorado and Arizona as well. They're scaling. Upwards of 1 million residencies are covered by Fireside across those states. And then the idea is that Fireside is creating access so that residents and communities are using Fireside are more likely to actually take on defensible space and home hardening actions that have been identified as discoveries and opportunities on their property. And there's an education component. But how does it work? So Fireside is a platform, and it's a platform of about 4 different tools. And you can see those tools here in this massive workflow from the orange hexagon. So from grant opportunities to community chipping programming that they're organizing via Fireside, through fuel removal coordination. These are all different tools that can be used within Fireside to help streamline the parcel level data that Fireside is its bread and butter. However, at the nexus of all of this, and at the nexus of understanding how Fireside can best provide parcel level data to municipalities, to fire protection districts and fire agencies, is through their defensible space inspection, their DSI tool that's used most prominently throughout their different clients. And I think why it's like we're going to go into the defensible space inspection software and the DSI tool in just a moment, but I think that just to spend a second on the fuel removal, the grants opportunities, it's all of these different tools are meant to be able to better understand that parcel level data for a variety of reasons, right? For municipalities to understand what their risk and reduction responsibilities are and what they need to do in order to elevate education, outreach, their own reduction and implementation practices that they have to do. I think it's also a means of being able to really use that data to go after grants in a more accurate way, to be able to really double down and say we have X amount of communities in this area that have an extensive amount of, I use this example a lot, of Italian cypress in their front yard. Really speak to more specific data and need for that matter. So to focus on the DSI tool though, so the DSI, you can see here under the DSI tool, inspections, and some people call them assessments, and I might be saying both of them because I have different partners that use both and I kind of go in and out. These inspections are done at the parcel level, like I've been saying, and the address list, I redacted the actual addresses, but you can see there that, those are addresses of those specific properties that have been inspected. And they list those assessments out by address with a variety of different categories to be able to understand what's going on, how it was assessed, etc. I think the 2 things that feel most important from this quick view of a lot of different inspections all at once are 2 different columns. You can see here that there's the overall impression. So this is the inspector going out and being able to more or less give this a quick impression around how this particular property was maintained. Is it very well maintained? Is it poorly maintained? And you can see that there is a variety, of course. Most likely a moderately well maintained is the one that I see most often. But I think the other thing that's really important that I like to really focus on and talk about in terms of how to best use DSI is the inspection access. So for this particular program, all of the inspections have to be full access in order for you to, and because of the fact, and just as a little bit more of a digress, because this particular program allows for a cash reimbursement to happen on the other end. And so in order for that grant to actually happen, in order for you to get cash, an assessor needs to come onto the property and do a full inspection. That's not necessarily the case. And in fact, that's actually less likely. You can still see for other assessments, for other project polys, you might see more of a street view only. Now, I think that there's two ways to look at that. When you have the opportunity to do a full access, a 360-degree view of a property, what are you going to be able to assess? A lot more opportunities, a lot more discoveries, a lot more data for that particular parcel, but it also takes a lot of time. And some of these municipalities, some of these fire protection districts, et cetera, don't have the capacity to be able to do that. And based on the construct of their program and what they're trying to accomplish, perhaps it is just a street view where they are just seeing what can be done in the front yard. Is that still good data? Absolutely. Are you able to get more data because you're able to assess more properties in a day? Definitely. I think it just really depends on what the priority for that particular program and that particular need is. And you can see that in that inspection access. And there could be a program where it varies, where a property owner can give full permission for full access or not. And that is part of this as well. Okay. So here's the parcel level data in the making. So you can see here, this is a full access inspection. The exact location of both defensible space and home hardening discoveries are reflected. Don't ask me what that blue dot is. I don't know what it is. But the yellow is the home hardening. The red dots are the defensible space opportunities, discoveries. Again, the terminology under Fireside is sort of loose, and so I use kind of all of it. So in order for this to happen, in the moment, an inspector is using the DSI map with the parcel data live on the app during the inspection, and they're able to click the screen and using the parcel data that's reflecting on the app, click where they're seeing that infraction take place. So for example, if there's a tree that's abutting against a structure, they can go to that particular part of the structure and identify that there is a tree there that needs to be removed. And the same goes for home hardening as well. So it's not just being able to then point at a building and be able to say that there was a tree there, it needs to be removed. There's a whole compendium of categories that are then connected to whatever sort of discovery you made as the inspector in that moment. So you can see here on the top left of my photo that I took, there's the green vegetation compendium. So that means that there's of all the different types of vegetation issues that could arise within the realm of defensible space, they are categorized under this. So it's not just a matter of looking at the structure and seeing that there's grass that needs to be better maintained. There's a category of that. There are details to it. There is an education around what you can do as far as required actions. Here's additional resources and information for you to better understand what this looks like for you. And that's the case for 37 different vegetation compendium discoveries, ranging from, like you see here, grasses and weeds to piles of dead veg, twigs, branches, dead leaves, you name it, it's listed. And that's not all. You can see that there's the little house icon. Those are home hardening discoveries. Those are the deck stuff, the veg under the deck and vents, etc. And then you can see here that there's that flame where that's the combustible stuff, where within your DSI tool, you are able to not just take a picture or identify where there might be, for example, a propane tank, it's being able to identify the compendium that there's, you know, a propane tank that's very close to a structure, a pile of lumber that's close to a structure. Wicker furniture is an example of something that's listed under fire aside that you can identify, so that this list of information becomes very, very specific, not just to have it for fire aside and for whoever the municipality is that's leading it, but more importantly for the property owner to be able to really, really identify what they need to do. I think that's really important, for especially when it comes to things that they just see around their house and that maybe they've been seeing for a long time that they wouldn't even think to do something with. I think about like a pile of lumber. Actually showing them you need to remove this and this is why is a really, really powerful message that can be done. Okay, so what does that actually look like for the property owner when they receive this type of information? So in the back end, you're still, just to refresh, someone is using the DSI tool to do a full access inspection of the property. They have found a couple of infractions: poorly maintained tree, leaf and needle litter is on the ground. They've been able to go and identify where specifically that is on the property. And so then it's populating in some sort of, in a report, the photo of what that is, where it is, and why it's an issue. And then you can see here on the bottom, there's a couple of annotated photos of being able to hyper focus on what the actual issue infraction could be. And then you've got this litany, this list of opportunities towards your compliance that you can see as part of your report. Again, this is something that folks are seeing on their end when they're receiving their property inspection. But you can see here that with this particular example, there's issues with the vinyl gutters, there's enclosed eaves, there's some issues with the wood plank and sidings. And why this matters is because, yes, you are getting a robust amount of parcel level data for you to better understand what communities are in need of more. But then that property owner has a working list of the things that they need to do in order to get to some sort of compliance. I want to put an asterisk in that and say that it doesn't always work, right? It doesn't always work to be able to get this, to be a property owner, get this list of things to do in order to get yourself into compliance, and then that actually happens. Whether there's all the money in the world, there's a variety of reasons why that doesn't happen. So I don't necessarily think that it's all just rainbows and sunshine, that this really, really efficient, streamlined mechanism to be able to identify issues, provide them in an effective way, allows for actual compliance to always happen. And we'll be able to talk about that in just a second. But in addition to that parcel level data, what you're also seeing as part of Fire Aside and on the project admin side are all of the different types of assessments that are happening in real time. So you can see here out in West Sonoma County, the couple of orange dots that you're seeing are all of the different assessments that took place within the last week. So this is one of the projects that we're working on. This is a community and volunteer-led effort. So volunteers, as part of their local community-based organizations, are leading the way and administering DSI and going out to their communities, their neighbors, their friends, and doing full access inspections and identifying those defensible space opportunities on those properties. And you can see here about, I don't know, maybe about 15 happened last week. This is maybe a little out of order, but you can see that in addition to this list of all of the different compliance issues that you might need to work on, all of this is nicely packaged into a report that's meant to really hone in on that education around how you can be able to do this. And also to be able to understand what might be available for funding. So you can see here, this is another property user, a property owner interface where they're seeing their opportunity to remove the combustible vegetation in zone 0. And in addition to a little bit of an instruction that comes with that compendium connection with the treatment and photo, you can see that there's grants available. So this is where that other piece of one of the other tools within Fireside is talking to the DSI tool, where grants are managed. If there's additional cash that the municipality is organizing under this effort to get folks to be more fire resilient, and they have created a program where removing vegetation in zone 0 is eligible for cash, then that is an incentive, an even more incentive to do it, and they can click on that icon to learn a little bit more about what they can do in order to get that money. Before I go on, I think we'll keep on going. And so in terms of zone 0, I just want to make sure that we all kind of know where zone 0 policy is at this moment. So zone 0 has their AB 3074, which went into effect in 2020. But 2020 was written in 2020, and the idea was that there were going to be regs and enforcement policies around ready to go in 2023, and that got sticky, right? Like that got sticky. Zone 1 is in effect, zone 2 is in effect, but zone 0 has gotten kind of lost in the matter. However, we're seeing that current timeline kind of unlock itself with regulations drafted for public comment statements slated sometime this month, which is both really exciting because it makes a Fireside tool that much more important to be able to identify at the parcel level what kind of zone 0 work needs to be done. But I also think that it's, like I said, Fireside is not the one-stop shop for what needs to be done in order to help folks get on board with what zone 0 is going to look like for their house, for their property. It's a variety of things that need to be done around education, around outreach, helping folks understand that maybe they really like the bamboo that's, creates a little bit of privacy from their neighbors, or they have a magnolia tree that their kids planted 30 years ago that's in front of their front house and it means a lot to them. These are things that at this point are subject for removal. And Fireside is a helpful tool, but I don't actually think it's the tool. It's the most important tool. It really creates that education. Providing cash to be able to do this really, really expensive work is really important, but then also that personalized messaging, the neighborhood collective progress is really important, which is why I made mention that one of those programs is volunteer led. These are neighbors helping neighbors build more community resilience in their neighborhood. And then I also think that there's something to be said around that aesthetic inspiration. We don't want our yards to look like moonscapes, and so if you're going to remove the trees and if you're going to remove the things that make my front yard beautiful, what can I help? What can I do that's going to make it beautiful in a different way? So having all of that work. I also think that sometimes all that might not actually happen either, and that some of these types of inspections could never really allow for that parcel level data to take place in the way that it needs to, because there's properties that are out there that maybe have home improvements that are not permitted, right? So there's going to be a lot of constraints that are going to come up against what zone 0 enforcement and implementation is going to look like. And Fireside is there for a good lens of it, but it's not the one-stop shop. And I just want to make mention too that, while zone 0 enforcement is kind of going through its rigmarole with the Board of Forestry, there are municipalities that are moving forward with it. For example, Berkeley Fire Department is one that uses Fireside, is using Fireside fairly extensively. Just last month, I think, the Berkeley City Council unanimously approved a proposal which will require a 5-foot buffer of essentially the zone 0 around homes, decks, structures that are within a very specific neighborhood in the Berkeley Hills that has been identified as the very highest severity zone within Berkeley. So they're moving forward. They're using Fireside as a tool. They're using Fireside to identify what property owners are going to be needing to do in order to get their properties in compliance with zone 0 moving forward. and they're using, like I said, Zone 0 as a tool. And there's also something to be said about how this parcel level data that Fireside is using can be helpful to insurance policies. I think that, we can't have a wildfire resilience conversation without bringing insurance into the fold in some way, shape, or form, and data is a part of it in this very, very huge way. Fireside is a means to be able to help neighborhoods come into compliance, yes, but it's also perhaps an opportunity for them to be able to build partnerships with insurance companies, to be able to build policies, get premiums lower, and really confirm with data, with parcel level data, that the work is getting done. So you can see here, Prescott Fire Department Wildfire Risk Manager, Prescott, Arizona, is saying as such. And then, of course, we've got the example that just came on this last spring from the city of Paradise, where they're working in partnership now with Mercury Insurance to be able to implement those home hardening treatments, those defensible treatments, to bring those policies back into the city of Paradise, to bring those premiums down. Fireside is a means to be able to use that data to allow for those opportunities to happen as well. So it is first and foremost a thing for property owners to be able to do, but the parcel level data and what you can really do with it can be used over and over in a variety of different, very impactful ways. And that's it.
Wonderful. Molly, thank you so much. Another kind of virtual round of applause, I'm sure. That was a heck of a primer on a pretty powerful tool. It also just kind of highlights the makeup of this working group, where we have folks, who are from, fire safe councils and others, up to, in terms of like just geographic scale, to organizations like Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District that are looking at, kind of landscape scale treatments. So these two presentations by you and Nathan are such great bookends for kind of the workflow world, down at that parcel and that building structure scale, and then out to the, ridge and mountain scale. So thank you so much. And I loved, some of the terms you used. This was a real huge education for, I'm sure, myself and many others on the call, just around community resilience, but then the nexus with policy and ordinances. I loved opportunities toward your compliance. That's a great, very forward thinking, very positive thinking way of describing these, infractions, these potential infractions. Thank you for, drawing the line between, kind of structure level resilience up to the community level resilience. Just want to invite any clarifying questions for Molly before a couple of questions just for both Molly and Nathan. Just going to look in the chat. Looks like Stu's question about interactions with insurance companies was answered. That was well anticipated there, Molly. Any other questions from the group? Just clarifying. Feel free to put those in chat or go ahead and take yourself off mute. Awesome. Well, it was a very thorough, and again, just so appreciate like the practitioners or the end users perspective you gave, Molly. I wanted these two approaches are so different. Obviously, what the tie that binds is wildfire resilience, whether that's you're thinking about risk reduction to communities, or you're thinking about ecological resilience. They obviously are totally intertwined. The more resilient structures are that are embedded in the landscape, whether it's an urban area or an exurban area, the more resilient that landscape is, or the more resilient that ecosystem is. But I'm curious about, from both of you, what you learned about kind of what works and maybe what what some lessons learned along the way were when you implemented these tools. I mean, it's so great that both of you presented implementation. Oftentimes tools, we hear about them in development, but you are implementers of these tools. And so lessons learned, what's the top lesson learned that you would love to just impart to this group? Nathan, maybe we start with you.
Sure, happy to take that. I will use the example of the Alpine Road Community Escape Route. One of the lessons we learned, and I kind of touched on it, is figuring out what is feasible before kind of as step one. So if you know that it is not feasible to treat this area, then get that out of the way early, because otherwise, we went down that road a little bit too far in looking for grant opportunities and successfully getting grants, and then having to be like, oh wait, we can't actually do that
because of the steepness. Is that what
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. We can't actually treat all those acres, and so we haven't been having to go back to the drawing board, and that's very difficult. Is of trying to look for funding opportunities while not knowing exactly what is possible, but kind of meeting both of those. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons that we've learned.
Yeah, that's great. Molly, just looking at the time briefly, what's a big lesson learned as you move forward implementing?
I love a streamlined system. I love organizing a lot of information and a lot of data in this very, very succinct way that to me feels very palatable and accessible. And that's me. And I think that's obviously not everybody. And I think it's been one exercise over and over again, is that no matter how accessible and easy this data is made and this information is made to the property owner, they are still going to do something or not with it. And so it's been me trying to figure out, okay, what other ways is this parcel level data, are these data sets meaningful and impactful for the community at large? Maybe this one particular property isn't going to do anything with it, but like the example of the insurance opportunities that could come from it, that's a way to be able to bring even more impact to it. So it's just trying to flip, reinvigorate, reevaluate, and reinvent, I guess, why this tool can matter to a community, because it's not apples to apples across the field.
Thank you both so much. Thank you all for joining us today for another installment of the Regional Wildfire Data Working Group. Next time we meet will be in August. We'll send out an announcement on the Google group. If you're not on the Google group, please contact me at tom@togetherbayarea.org or Michaela@togetherbayarea.org. Thank you all so much. And thanks again to Molly and Nathan. Take care, everybody.